So my book Real Growth is finally out. The culmination of over 200 podcasts with some of the leaders in the industry. It's taken me about 2 years to pull it together. So it is available now. It's on Amazon, so check out the link in my bio and please let me know how you get on with it. It's all designed to really help people through 3 sections of growth, mindset and business. So check it out, let me know what you think.
Selling defined as a transfer of enthusiasm from one person to another, and that's very much how I do it. I'm just like, yeah, this is why I think what I've got can help you. This is why I think what I've got can help you. And do you want to come on this journey with me? Because I think it'll be really fun. And so I just sort of spell out the journey and go, this is what I think I can offer. How does that sound? And fortunately, 80% of them are like, yeah, that sounds great. And the other 20% are usually people who've either just come in for a second opinion or I fix them in one session, which is very rare. But, you get the occasional one, don't you? And you do something and they're just like, oh, I'm fixed. And then you feel fantastic for a day or two. But for most of them, it's explaining the journey that I propose to take them on and seeing whether they're up for that. But I'm hoping, I think because I've spent 90 minutes with them by that point, by the time we go through that, they've got an idea, of whether they think I can help with them. They know whether they believe me or not by that point.
What you're doing.
It's trust, isn't it? It's so much of it's about trust. And that comes down to, being as open as you can, people, and being as honest as you can, and saying when you don't think you can help them, or where there are things that you're like, well, I think we can achieve this. I don't know whether we can achieve that. I think I can help you get better, but how much better we can get, I don't know, because you've got this and that going on with you. And I think it's very much that setting those expectations. Again, we're like, I hope we can achieve this, but blah, blah, blah. So I think people respond really well to clinicians who don't promise the earth.
Yeah.
Don't oversell. Don't oversell it.
I think selling it sort of gets misunderstood and misconstrued, really, as to what it is. It's some sort of manipulation, or it's convincing something of someone that they don't want. Yeah. Whereas if you've aligned it, it's what they
I'm convincing them of something they do want. In fact, I'm letting themselves convince themselves that it's what they want, because just by showing them what's possible.
Hello, welcome. Today I am joined by Nell Mead, who has got the very simplistic title of physio. But having looked at your website and done a bit of research into you, there's a lot more to you than just not just being a physio. I don't like saying the word just, but I'm looking forward to finding out more. But hello, Nell.
Hi, Andy. How you doing?
I'm doing very, very well, thank you. Very well.
Splendid. Marvelous.
So this is my first proper meeting, I would say, since having 3 weeks off. So it's quite a nice one, really. Cup of tea and a bit of a chat. And
cheers.
Cheers indeed. Yeah. Quite a boring cheers, but we'll take it.
Sorry, should have started later. I could have had a gin.
I wasn't judging you on that, by the way.
That is tea in there, isn't it? It's not a.
It's tea. It is tea. Yeah, it is tea, and my very cheesy thing that was brought to me by a colleague that my wife loves. So there we go. So that's a bit there. But no, I mean, so we've not met before, Nell, but you were a mutual friend and contact of ours. Kath Spencer-Smith suggested that I have you on. So why do you think she said that I need to speak to you? It's the first time she's ever done that. So
obviously because I'm completely fascinating. I don't know. Just because mainly I think because she likes the message I'm trying to get out there, which is very much about sort of, treating the whole body, not just, the knee or the foot that's walked in through the door. And she, like me, keen to get that message out there that, physio is not just, a sort of strengthen it, rub it, stretch it, that there's more to it, that we can have more fun with it.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. So my wife's a CBT therapist, so right. I really believe in all of that. And even though I work in like the physical medicine space in my main role, I think I'm more interested in people and understanding that. And a friend of mine who is a hand therapist I saw has just taken a CBT therapist on their staff. Right. So I think people are becoming more open to looking at the whole person, not just like the localized area. So what made you start thinking in this way?
So I was a physio in the army for 10 plus years. And I very much was, sort of old school traditional, if your knee hurts, we have a look at the knee, we work out which structure within your knee is painful. We have a look at the joint above and below, but, we don't really get too technical about it. We work out which structure it is and then we work on that. And then I was on a CPD course and I was chatting to one of the other participants like 15 odd years ago. And he was telling me about a patient that he was treating who was a Gaelic footballer. And he said, and his knee hurts, so I'm treating his shoulder and he's getting better. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I can kind of see why that might be a thing, but how the hell did you know that was a thing? How do you test for that? And how do you, sort of, how do you know that that's going to work? And so he sort of introduced me to Diane Lee, LJ Lee, all that crowd, looking at regional interdependence. So looking at how one body part affects the other, looking at the whole kinetic chain, as opposed to just looking at the painful area. And it's been fascinating. It's opened up a whole load of different horizons for me, and now I'm very much looking at whole body, but I'm also looking more at mind body and all the the psychosocial stuff that we just didn't talk about so much like 25 years ago.
Yeah. And how, what, when you were coming through the military and so on, I mean, it's a very camaraderie based thing. It's a community based thing as well. So, like, had you started thinking around that? I'm sure you weren't just looking at that joint when you were doing it before you had that conversation with the person. So, like, how much stuff had you done that was around beyond just that localized potential issue?
Well, I guess I'd started kind of noticing patterns, really. So noticing that when somebody's knee was sore, they often had a glute issue or an ankle issue or something like that. But I hadn't really worked out how to codify it and how to look beyond that and how to predict it, test for it, all that sort of stuff. But it was definitely very clear from being in the military and not that my patient population within the military was quite different, and they tended to get better faster, partly because they were younger and fitter, partly because they were more desperate to get better because their body is their livelihood. So yeah, it's just sort of thoughts around that. And then I did a postgrad diploma in sports medicine, and so there was a lot more thinking around. We had guys coming in and teaching about exercise physiology and, hydration and nutrition and all those sorts of things. And I started to see how all of those sorts, stress levels, sleep, how all those sorts of things could contribute to overall health, but also more specifically tissue health and people's response to physio treatment and exercise.
Mm,
So yeah, it
yeah.
became part of a much bigger thought process, which I've now done my best to codify.
Well, no, there's many topics there, but I was
Yeah.
just chatting with. I went to see a physio friend of mine, so he used to manage our clinic, and we essentially sold it to them on that bit. But he's as many places now are. He's a sports rehabber, but he's got physios on his team as well. People are looking at nutrition and sleep and all of this that they weren't doing prior. So, where do you see that role of a physio being now, and also like in terms of the training that they go through? Like, where do you see that all sitting?
So I obviously don't think that we are necessarily specialists in those areas, but I think we are competent to have the initial conversations around those areas and to look at where there might be deficiencies, where people might be able to shore things up with simple lifestyle changes, but also, then to sort of signpost and refer on where it feels like those things might be a bigger causative factor. For example, saying, well, you've got, you're going through a divorce and a house move and, kids leaving home and all this sort of stuff. Do you think it might be worth going to have a chat about this with somebody, to having some talking therapy or whatever it is? Or, you haven't drunk a glass of water in 6 days. Do you think possibly that, drinking a little bit more water might not be a terrible thing for your neck pain or your shoulder pain or whatever the heck it is? So I think having those conversations we are entirely qualified to have. Being the therapist who completely changes their diet or does the talking therapy, if we're not qualified in that, probably not so much. But I think having the conversations and starting people down that train of thought, we're absolutely qualified to do.
Mm. How have you seen that within clinical practice of the other people that you've seen or worked with from a clinical standpoint? How have you seen that being adopted in the wider community?
I haven't very much yet, to be perfectly honest. And I think it's for me, it's something that we ought to be doing an awful lot more of. For me, what I've seen most of in clinical practice is people doing a very quick and dirty subjective, sort of working out which is the nociceptive tissue and going straight into that. I've not seen, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I've not seen as much talk as I would like to see around that.
And what would you like to see if you were in an ideal scenario? What do you think good does look like in that?
Well, I mean, the way that I do it in my clinic, because I've set that up to, to be as optimal as I think it can be, is I spend 90 minutes on the assessment session. And quite often I will spend nearly an hour on the subjective, because I want to get right down to the depth of what's really going on for this patient, what it means to them, what else is going on in their life, what has happened before, previous injuries, all that sort of stuff, but previous illnesses, etc., etc., etc. Really get down to the bones of it. Um, and see what comes out. So it's much more, tell me your story, and then, sort of poking at little bits of the story and going, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. Rather than I was, reading somebody on LinkedIn yesterday saying, 10 minutes subjective, and we should all know everything about the patient in that time. I don't know all about anybody in 10 minutes. It takes me a lot longer than that. And I'm prepared to, take the time, make it happen slowly. I'm the slow physio. Bit thick. That's me.
I think I had you worked out after about two actually, but yeah, no, I think that's really interesting point on it. And I don't want to jump onto this question, but it was something that I wanted to ask you. So 90 minutes, when you get clients coming to you, then most
Yeah.
of the time it'll be, I would assume, if you didn't know them or they were just coming for a physio appointment, they'd be like 90 minutes. What planet are you on? It's like 20 minutes or half an hour or whatever it is.
Yeah, so I mean, I make a big point of saying that on my website, and before people book in, they have to call my PA, and she explains it all to them about why we're doing what we're doing. But honestly, when people come to me, that's what they're looking for. Nobody who comes to me is expecting a 20-minute rub down, um, because we put all the barriers in the way before they get to me. They have to call my PA. They have, they've read the website. They have to click on the bit that says you understand that it's going to be 90 minutes, and this is why. And they have to have done all their questionnaires and so on before they come in, because my lovely PA Cheryl is great at chasing them up the week before their appointment if they haven't done their intake forms, their questionnaires, sent in their MRI reports, sent in all their doctor's letters. We there's a lot of prep work that goes into it. And so we make that very clear to patients beforehand.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, like setting expectations for it, because
Mm.
I think there is a real issue for me. I'm in clinics all the time,
Yeah.
whether that's well, all over the country, and there's a real issue, I think, with people being able to. I mean, it gets called sales, but really it's communicate with the client about what good looks like for them, or what really trying to
Well,
understand that bit.
yeah, because I mean, obviously, what I do is not the only good way to do it, but it's the way I want to do it.
Yeah.
And it's the way I do it for my particular client base. Not everybody needs that.
So we're talking about how much people cost and how I really believe we need to drive the value within the industry up, because
Yeah.
there's so much value out there. Like you've had such an extensive career and you've got a different philosophy of doing it. So how do you price your sessions?
So an assessment session with me, which is the 90 minutes, and they get a report and they get all the videos, with their exercises and all the rest of it. That's 300 at the moment. But that's my price to get people over the door, so over the threshold, so they can see what I can offer them. And then my follow-ups are 400, because by that point they know what I can offer. And that's for an hour. But again, they will get a report, they'll get all their exercises on video. They get a lot of hand holding, report writing. If they need surgery, I'll try and go and watch the surgery. So there's a lot of hand holding and input that goes in with that. But yeah, I charge a lot for what I do. And I am fully booked, so I think that that justifies it.
In terms of that, because that'd be significantly more than
Yeah.
the vast
Yeah,
majority
absolutely.
of people out there.
Yeah,
But it's like when I fully agree. I think everyone needs to be charging more, really,
probably.
with what they're doing. So, like, and how do your clients? I know you're fully booked, but like, how do
Yeah.
they feed back to you when they like, are they communicated that prior to coming to see you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh God, yes, absolutely. There's no way I'm going to just drop that on them, during the session. So, when I mean my prices are on my website for a start, but also when they make that first phone call to Cheryl, she goes through all the prices with them, explains that, the average patient I will see for probably 6 sessions after the initial, and and how much that works out as. So she goes through all the prices, makes sure that they're comfortable with that before she even takes the first booking, because that would be disingenuous. That'd be wrong to not do that. That's not fair on people. So it's all about setting expectations. They know what they're getting into. But if they're prepared to do that, then yeah, absolutely. They come on in and I do my thing.
So when you see it, that I speak to so many people, and some of these are so experienced, run their
Yeah,
businesses for a long time,
yeah.
very high, really well respected, and they're
Mm,
like, "Oh, I'm not sure I should put it up by a fiver or a tenner, even
yeah,
like money wise." So, like, what's
yeah.
your message to those people, or your overall view on it?
So when I do put my prices up, which I do sort of every 4 or 5 years generally, I tend to put it up by 50 quid at a time. So it will go up from say 350 to £400 for a session. But what I will do is I will email out all the patients that I've seen since the last price rise. I'll explain that this is happening and why, and I will give them the opportunity to prepay for as many sessions as they want at the existing rate. Obviously, if they don't then use them, I will happily refund them. But what that does is it gives them the opportunity to take advantage of the current slightly lower price, gives me some cash flow, and then what's lovely is they actually feel grateful for the opportunity to prepay for as many sessions as they want. So it really does feel like a win-win whenever I do that.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
I
and I
think, but
think it's
again, it's
interesting.
communication and expectation setting, isn't it? What I'm not going to do is, have them come in at one price and then, 6 weeks later, it's like, oh, by the way, it's just gone up. So
Yeah.
it's and obviously they can then choose. And so, very occasionally, I think the last time I put my prices up, I lost 3 patients, and they were just like, I can't do that. I'm like, that's absolutely fine. So what we did was, we found them somebody else who was in general, most of the three of them were coming to the end of their time with me anyway. So, I found them somebody who was close by to their house, somebody who was good, and I gave them a proper handover. Again, it's just about doing the grown-up thing.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting the fact you're fully booked, really big waiting list, and
Mm,
that's yeah. I'm really keen to challenge that mindset of people as to what they're charging for. And look, it's
yeah.
not it's not as easy to say, oh yeah, just put your prices up and there you go,
No.
it'll solve all your problems. But it's understanding how clear the value is that you're offering. I presume. Like how have you
Yeah.
when you're doing it? Like when you say put
Mm,
up 50 quid, like how do
yeah.
you? Do you do any sort of science behind it, or like what's making you doing it at that
Well,
point?
it's usually when I start going, how are my profit margins? Oh crap! So it's that thing about going, okay, well, what's gone up? How have my costs gone up in the past few years? And some of that's generally, rent. That's the big driver. But also, how much CPD have I been doing? How much have I been, spending on my own development as a physio? Therefore, what extra value am I able to offer? So it's usually a mixture of those two things, and that's normally how I, explain it to my patients. It's like, the value's going up, but also my costs are going up, and therefore, I have to pass on, the costs to you.
It's good. Yeah, no, I think people. I'll get this out to some people because I think these really just benefit people's mindsets to really
Yeah,
value what they're doing. But yeah, you've got real belief in what you're offering, and I'm sure that
yeah,
you're never trying to kind of hover over or it's 90 minutes, but and I see that quite a lot in there now, where people are almost defending why they're doing something
mm,
prior, and I don't think that probably if you're looking at the patient experience, the patient would be like, well, hang on, I'm not sure they even believe in what they're doing now. And
mm.
like, have you seen that? Is that would you have you seen that the people may be a little bit uncertain as to what they're offering, whether it be going to get a scan or using technology or trying to get them in for more appointments, say?
don't really look too closely at what other people are doing, if I'm perfectly honest. I'm just like, this is who I am. This is what I've got to offer. And if patients want that, then that's great. And and they do want it, to the point where I've actually had to close my waiting list at the moment because I'm too busy. I'm booked up till Christmas with new patients. I can't go beyond that. And so yeah, we've literally just closed the waiting list for a bit. And once that calms down, we'll reopen it to the people who are currently signing up.
Yeah, that's really interesting then. So why do you think there is so much interest in your way of doing things?
I think literally because it is unusual. I think there's too many too many patients who are frustrated by the 20-30 minute sessions and who don't feel like they're really being listened to deeply. And so when they come in, they are my sole focus, and they will get a written report later on in the day, which will prove that I've been listening. Because again, it's all about being really in depth and being really holistic. And you've got lots of patients who will be like, well, I'm pretty sure this hip problem is coming from my ankle, but my insurer says that my physio has to only work on my hip because that's the bit that hurts, and I can't find anybody who's prepared to not to think outside the box, as it were. And so those are the people that end up seeking me out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's just really interesting. But in terms of other people doing that sort of service, I don't know if you know, do you know Richmond Stace?
I do. Well, I don't know him personally, but we've crossed paths enough to know who he is very well. Yeah,
Because I
we've
think
we've shared patients.
it sounds like, yeah, so philosophically, Richmond is also like, I know Richmond really well, and
Yeah.
he and I do quite a lot together. And again, it sounds a similar-ish approach in terms of really the issue that's presenting may not be really what it is. There's a lot going on, and trying to understand that person is so critical to it.
Yeah, I think from what I understand of Richmond, he's more of the sort of talking and the chronic pain in the mind and the psychology side of things, whereas I'm more of the sort of the bio side of the psychosocial, and my understanding he's more of the psychosocial side. But that doesn't mean that our approaches cannot work together really well, and in fact they have done for a couple of patients over the years.
Yeah, no, that's great. We'll have to get you. So he and I have got a podcast together, so
Oh, awesome! I'll have a listen.
we'll have to get you on that one as well. So yeah, I think you'd be great for that one. Yeah, and then I suppose what what do you think is, well, if we go back right to the start for you, what made you want to be a physio in the first place?
Um, I wanted to be a tennis player, and I wasn't good enough, and I kept getting injured, and eventually I saw a physio for chronic wrist injuries, and I was just like, okay, well, if I'm not going to make it as a pro player, then I want to help other people stay in whatever it is that they love. And originally I was thinking about sports physio as being the pinnacle, but actually my experience of sports physio, which is largely in the military, but some beyond there, has been more often a bit more of just first aid and patching people up. Whereas what it turns out I really love is the long-term problem solving.
Mm. Yeah. And so when you were going through then, so you were visualizing that you were going to be working in sport and,
Oh, I was going to
tennis
go and join
physio
the
or
tennis
whatever.
tour and go around the world living out of a suitcase. Turns out I hate living out of a suitcase, and I really, really love absolute stability and the headspace to be able to process, all the stuff that's in front of me. So yeah, that would have been a terrible career choice. But it was where I was going, when I did my university interviews.
And
And
then
even though they told us not to, right? They always said, don't tell them you want to do sports physio. I was like, it's the only thing I want to do with my life.
you're right. So yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. So because I think
Yeah,
people would say, yeah, you want to work in the NHS, you've got to kind of
yeah.
play the game just to some extent. So did you say that you wanted to work in sport?
I think I did. But also I did one of my work experience placements at the Royal Free, which is in Hampstead in London, which is it was, and I believe still is, the National Centre for Scleroderma. And I'd been to a lecture while I was there on scleroderma, so I was all like sports physio and scleroderma.
That was your
Yeah,
out of
clueless,
that.
absolutely freaking clueless.
And I wondered, like, when you were growing up or doing the course or prior to that even, were you, say, more inquisitive than the people on the course that you were doing it with, where you were looking deeper at things?
So I wouldn't say that, but what I would say is that I trained at UEA, which was very much based on clinical reasoning, and that was perfect. Because it wasn't that I was more inquisitive, but I think the course taught us very much to be more inquisitive. So we would go out on placements with students from other universities who were being taught a more sort of recipe-based style of treatment. And so in the first couple of years, they looked miles better than us, because they would be like, right, sprained ankle I see in front of me. Here is what I do for a sprained ankle, bish, bash, bosh. And we looked crap, because we were going, okay, let's think about this. With the anatomy, what might happen when you invert an ankle? Which structures might be involved? What might I do about those structures? So there's a lot more thought process going on, but that's a lot slower than having your sprained ankle pack. But by the third year, I felt that we had an advantage, because we could cope better with things that weren't necessarily straightforward. And that's what I think I have carried through all the way, is this really behaving like it would do if it was a straightforward ankle sprain, or is there possibly something else going on? Do I need to think around it more?
Mm,
And if so,
yeah.
what are the first principles around that?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think I got lucky really with my uni. They were fantastic.
Yeah. And then, so when you were there, then at what point did you start thinking there were more horizons than looking after Tim Henman?
Well, I did that on my
Did
elective.
you? Oh, yes.
So I did my elective at the Queen's Club, which was then the National Tennis Centre. And yeah, so yeah, he came, I've met Tim several times over the years, and I'm always very grateful that he does not remember me as a student. Uh, um, so I joined the army straight after uni. I had an army bursary, and I went straight in. And my first post was at Headley Court, which was the army's big rehab centre, residential rehab centre for people with more serious injuries. And so I was really thrown into the not straightforward stuff from day one, which was fascinating. And I had some fantastic seniors who were also very much thinking about, what if this isn't as straightforward as it appears to be. And so, yeah, I think I just got incredibly lucky. There were some really, really good people there, and it set me on a path.
Yeah, Headley Court, what an amazing place
Oh
that
my God, it was awesome.
was. I know it's
Yeah.
no longer being used for that
Well,
bit
it's
of it,
Stamford
but
Hall now, isn't it? But they've just moved the venue. But the team I had around me back in those days when I was a real baby physio was I'm still in touch with a lot of them. They were just fantastic. So yeah, I was
yeah.
incredibly lucky.
What in particular was good about that environment?
It was super immersive, because so you'd have patients coming in for, I mean, at the time we used to do 4 week stints. So patients would come in for 4 whole weeks, and they'd be doing physio and rehab for 5 or 6 hours a day every day for Monday to Friday for those weeks. We later realized that the fourth week was probably a bit much, and they were getting overcooked by that point, so we went down to 3, and that worked better. But it was I think it was literally stuff like that. It was everybody was constantly looking at what we were doing and how could we make it better. And that was an overall thing. So it's, are we better with 4 weeks or 3? It was an individual thing. It was, did all the decisions that you made with this patient, were they world class? Because you were constantly having to justify what you were doing, because there were all sorts of multidisciplinary meetings all the time, and you were constantly having to say, well, this is what I'm doing with this patient, and this is why I think it's the best thing to do. And so it was in some ways high pressure, but also incredibly supportive, because I was the baby, and I was the only newly qualified physio there, and so everybody around me was more senior and also super inspiring. We had some really, really good people there who really went out of their way to teach me. We had regular CPD sessions, regular journal club. It was just really, really great.
So how did you get that role then? Because that does sound like an amazing. I know how good the clinicians were that have worked and gone through that program.
So I did my gap year in the army between school and uni. They used to run a gap year scheme. I think they're running it again now. And you're not really supposed to join the army again after you've done it. That's not what they do it for. They do it so that young, high achieving students get a taste of the military, so that when you become a captain of industry or whatever the heck you do in the future, you let your employees go off and do territorials. But in the small print, as it turns out, is they have to offer you a bursary in whatever subject you're studying. Now, they don't offer bursaries for physiotherapy, but the small print played into my favour. So I in my second year got called and they said, did you read the small print on your contract? I'm like, I had a contract, and they're like, yes, and it said that you would have a bursary if you wanted one. And I went, but I hated being in the army. It was my worst nightmare. And they said, well, being a physio is quite different, so let's organise you a placement at Headley Court. And I had a placement at Headley Court and went, oh wow, this is something special. And so yeah, I just said, oh, thank you very much, I'll take that bursary. And yeah, it was just pure luck, ended up there.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, who were some of the people that had a big impact on you there?
Oh lordy. So the head of the physio card at the time was Dave Minden, who was he's an incredibly charismatic leader. My the two men in charge of the physio department, Bob Jones and Ron Bain, both very different Scotsmen, but fabulous physios. I learned so much from both of them. Who else did I have? Stacey McQueenie, just absolute ninja. Sue, Lisa, I mean, just the whole team were phenomenal. And then it wasn't just the physios as well, because so you've got the physios doing the hands-on stuff, sort of half an hour a day with the patients, but there's also the remedial instructors who spend their time exercising ARIs these days, but back in the day it was just RIs, and they spend the sort of 4.5 to 5 hours with the patients every day. So they're down on the rehab gym floor, and so some of those guys were absolutely superb. Guys and girls, Max Martin was amazing. Yeah, there's just honestly too many to name. They're just so inspiring, and I'm still friends with a lot of them now.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. It's funny, some of those names, it was just when I started getting involved in this area, and I remember some of those names, they were sort of on our
They're on your radar.
we supplied like isokinetics and balance kit and stuff to the centres. But yeah, it did feel like that was such a sort of a golden era of that bit of it, because we did some of the work with the doctors like John Etherington, John,
of course, John Houghton,
Alan
Rees,
John Rogers. Don't know if John Rogers was there when you were there.
Roger Phillips was there.
Right.
So it was Ian McCurdy. Yeah, amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. So how in terms of you for you and your career then? So how long were you there for?
Well, I was at Headley Court for nearly 2 years, which was most of my junior rotation. Then I spent a year at Frimley Park finishing off my junior rotation. So I had nearly 3 years of being a junior. Right. It was amazing. And then got chucked into the deep end running outpatient clinic in a med centre at NATO headquarters. Right. Having never done outpatients before. It was, sink or swim.
So where was that one? Where was that based?
That's at Northwood headquarters, just in North London, just south of Watford.
Yeah.
And
then, so how long were you in the military system for?
Including my gap year, 14 years.
Right.
Yeah. So that it was a long time. I liked completely institutionalized.
But were you part of the thing where you'd have it was every 2 years, was it rotated? Is that right? Were you part of that?
Pretty much every 2 or 3 years, you'd move on, because they wanted you to get really broad experience. Because obviously one day you'd be leading the cadre, leading the world. So broad-based experience, that's what they go for.
Right. And so how did you end up leaving in the end?
So while they were going for really broad-based experience, they wanted you to lead rather than be a clinician. And so my last proper post, I was OC physio for British Forces Cyprus, so head of physio for British Forces Cyprus. So I was essentially in charge of the physios and rehab instructors who were looking after the 8,000 military personnel and their families on Cyprus, which was great, mainly because the nearest physio who was in charge of me was 5,000 miles away, so I could make it as clinical as I wanted. So my day, my time there was 90% clinical, and I could basically make that up. But I knew that if I came back to the UK after that job, that there would be more oversight of my position, and that I would be spending more time flying a desk. And what floats my boat, and I'd literally just done my postgrad diploma in sports medicine. I was like, you're just turning me into a half decent physio, and now the next job I do will be policy and plans. No, thank you. Thank you for your time. I'm out. So yeah, that was the point at which apparently they now have a much more clinical career pathway that's available, but they didn't have that at the time. So it was either, if I wanted to be a clinician, I had to leave.
Right. And what did you go on to do?
Well, I loved Headley Court, so I had the bright idea to try and set up essentially Headley Court for civvies. Until I spoke to my accountant, and he went, "Yeah, that's a really quick way to lose all of your money." So we never quite worked that out, but I did build up a multidisciplinary rehab centre clinic in central London. It was called Victory Health and Performance, and I did that for 10 years. And luckily closed it just before COVID, because I would have been bankrupt by April 2020 had I kept that on.
Right. So what was your philosophy like? What were you bringing into that?
So we had physio, we had osteopathy, we had personal training, we had psychology, yoga, acupuncture, massage. We had sort of balance and movement therapy. We had a whole load of stuff going on, and the idea was just to, create, like we'd had at Headley, was a real team feeling and the ability to move patients to whoever's skills would benefit them the most. And we had periods where it worked really well and periods where it worked less well. And then we were underneath a Starbucks, and Starbucks flooded us over a weekend. And I came back on a Monday morning to find 20,000 litres of water pouring in through the electrical cupboard and a swimming pool in my gym that I hadn't ordered.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was fun. So I found the email address of the chief exec of Starbucks UK and dropped him a line, because it turns out that when you have insurance, when you work in an office building with a landlord, when you rent an office building from a landlord and you have contents insurance, your landlord's insurance, buildings insurance, covers the structure of the building, but it doesn't cover false ceilings and false floors or stud walls, and nor does your contents insurance. So I'm not quite sure how you make that work, but I didn't make that work. So when Starbucks were like, "Oh, you need your insurers to call us," I was like, "Yeah, bit of a problem with that one." So I emailed the chief exec of Starbucks UK and explained what was going on, and that I was a veteran with a small business, and that if he didn't get back to me fairly quickly, I would practice my sad face for the Daily Mail. And bless him, he did get back to me pretty quickly, and the Starbucks engineers came and had a look, and they mended it for us eventually. But it was not an easy process, and it took a long time, and it was not the only time they flooded us. So yeah, the clinic ultimately didn't. We ran out of money. It didn't work. But it was an incredible learning curve. I had some amazing clinicians working for me, some of whom I'm still friends with and still refer to now. So yeah, don't regret it, except for the financial hit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I admire anyone who tries to do anything, but let alone run a business and do that, because it's a different level of stress and the
Oh
financial bit
yes.
of it.
Oh
So
my
how was
God.
that then when you set this up? And I can imagine there's a big outlay, certainly in central London, and doing that. Like, how did you go cope with that mindset shift? Because you're very such a mindful person with your clients and all of that, and
Yeah,
all of a sudden you're probably in a different headspace almost overnight.
completely. Like I'm managing civilian staff who are very different to military staff, because they all trained in the NHS type thing, so that and we're having to suddenly deal with sales as well, which is a very different mindset. So managing civilian staff compared to military staff does feel a bit like herding cats at times. Plus there's the whole patient thing, plus there's the whole marketing thing, plus there's the whole running the books and the business and the finance kind of thing. So it was a very steep learning curve, and I'm not going to pretend I did it perfectly. I screwed it up on many occasions, but I tried. I put all the business coaching and best practice things that I could read into it, and at times it worked really well, but it was a very different mindset, and I put so much time into my staff and my patients that my own health went down the pan a little bit, and I started, getting injured and a bit broken, and getting sick. So it was, was a tough time. But on the other hand, I was in my 30s, and if you're not going to be an idiot in your 30s, when are you?
In your 40s as well.
I'm too old for that stuff now.
Yeah, I don't like to discriminate on that being an idiot at any age. That's
I mean, that's fair.
just whenever
That
it
type
comes.
of an idiot. I was that type of an idiot in my 30s. I'm a different type of idiot now in my 40s.
Yeah, no, it is funny, isn't it? Because again, if I think of when I'm so pleased I didn't know how hard it was going to be for those first 2 years, particularly, I would say. I remember being in a daze speaking to people like,
Yeah.
oh my God, like this. You've no clue, have you, when all of a sudden you're like, bam,
And
shit.
2 a.m. spreadsheets on a Friday. You're like, am I going to get home this weekend? Or am I just going to basically sleep the whole weekend because I'm so knackered? Yeah. Yeah, that.
No, I mean it's really interesting. Like I genuinely think one of my biggest achievements. So I've just been away in South Africa for 2 weeks, and then was on a business course at Oxford University this week.
Nice. Yeah.
And the fact is, I've not had to do any real operational work stuff because
And you
I've
took
got a
3
really
weeks
good
out
team,
and
and I can actually come out of it, and it's like, my God, actually, that is a massive achievement. But that's
Yeah.
14 years in.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
that is. And I think a lot of it is getting it set up right, and but you have to, like you said, you learned a lot from
But
it,
you've got to
and
go through it.
you've got to go through it. You have got to
You,
go through it, and you
you
can't be
learn it from the
told.
outside.
You
No.
can't be told it.
You've got to make your own mistakes.
Yeah.
It's so annoying.
Yeah, no, it's a
I'd
bit
love to
really,
learn from
isn't it?
somebody else's.
Yeah, no, it is a bit. Yeah, well, I'm intrigued on your perspective on sales then, because I released my first book in December based on the conversations that I've had with various people. I know you're an author as well, but I mean, I'm intrigued to know. So I want to put something together for selling in healthcare because I really believe in. I, when I was told I would never be a salesman, and yet I run a sales company, have been doing it for 20 odd years, and I don't really feel like I'm selling, but everyone's like, oh yeah, you're a salesman. It's like, well, I don't know how to define that, but how would you define selling in healthcare?
So I've heard selling defined as a transfer of enthusiasm from one person to another. And that's very much how I do it. I'm just like, yeah, this is why I think what I've got can help you. This is why I think what I've got can help you. And do you want to come on this journey with me? Because I think it'll be really fun. And, so I just sort of spell out the journey and go, this is what I think I can offer. How does that sound? And, fortunately, 80% of them are like, yeah, that sounds great. And the other 20% are usually people who've either just come in for a second opinion or I fix them in one session, which is very rare. But, you get the occasional one, don't you? And you do something and they're just like, oh, I'm fixed. And then you feel fantastic for a day or two. But for most of them, it's explaining the journey that I propose to take them on, and seeing whether they're up for that. But I'm hoping, I think because I've spent 90 minutes with them by that point, by the time we go through that, they've got an idea, of whether they think I can help with them. They know whether they believe me or not by that point.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's great. That's going in the book. So I'll reference you. Don't worry.
I didn't make it up, like most things, but I squirreled it away.
But I think, I mean, I've already written a lot of this book anyway, but it's like, I think it comes down to purpose. Like for someone, like as you as the clinician and as any person, like if you've got conviction, you've got to believe in what you're doing.
It's trust, isn't it? It's so much of it's about trust. And that comes down to, being as open as you can, people, and being as honest as you can, and saying when you don't think you can help them, or where there are things that you're like, well, I think we can achieve this. I don't know whether we can achieve that. I think I can help you get better, but how much better we can get, I don't know, because you've got this and that going on with you. And I think it's very much that setting those expectations. Again, we're like, I hope we can achieve this, but blah, blah, blah. So I think people respond really well to clinicians who don't promise the earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't oversell. Don't oversell it.
I think selling it sort of gets misunderstood and misconstrued, really, like
Yeah,
as to what it is. It's some sort of manipulation, or it's convincing something of someone that they don't want.
yeah,
Whereas if you've aligned it, it's what
right. I'm
they
convincing them of something they do want. In fact, I'm letting themselves convince themselves that it's what they want,
Mm,
because just by showing them what's possible.
yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's that's yeah, completely aligns with my general bit of it. And sometimes you think,
Mm.
yeah, am I just talking absolute nonsense here? And people kind of look at this, but that it's good to hear it from you're doing it from a clinical perspective, because
Yeah,
you're quite a unique business here, where yours is like a bespoke thing. It's
very much
quite
so.
unusual,
Yeah,
whereas there's a however many thousand clinicians out there offering the 30-minute or 45-minute or
yeah, or the shockwave, or the injections, or the this, that, and the other.
yeah.
And all that stuff. I looked at all of that stuff, and I read the E-Myth, as we all did, back in the early 2000s, and I was just like, oh, I can't do that. That's not for me. So there are bits of my business that are very turnkey, so the patient calls my PA Cheryl, and she's got a process that she goes through. But what happens at each stage of the process is individual. So
Yeah.
yeah, they will all get their welcome email, they'll all get their intake form, they'll all get their questionnaires, they'll all be asked for their MRI scans, or their, insole prescription, or whatever it is. But what I do with that, and what Cheryl does with that information, is going to be different and based on their responses.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's aligned with the E-Myth, really, because it's like you pick, it's like AI, you pick which
Mm,
bits you want to use or don't want to use, and which bits have to be you know what's right or wrong,
yeah,
and what feels right and what doesn't feel right. And
yeah,
certain bits like I'm intrigued on your perspective on AI and how you incorporate that, because it's on this course, like I think I'm relatively advanced with what I'm doing, but I looked at it and thought, God, there's so much I need to learn around efficiencies and
yeah,
like just basic stuff, like why the hell are you doing notes by yourself, or even like sending, it's not generic information out, but it's stuff that's like it's going to be better for the client, and
yeah.
you can make it more relevant for them. It can be done now.
Yeah, I mean, so I've looked into it, and I've got one of my friends. She's been in computers. She's mid 50s, and she's been obsessed with computers since she was 11 years old, right? So she's a bit of an AI expert and guru, and but she came in to sit with me recently to see if we could work out how I could use AI to write patient letters, and things like this. And it was a disaster, honestly, because the only one that you can really use, the only one that will silo information, really, is Copilot. So you don't want to be using the others unless you're going to redact all the patient information first before you give it to the AI, um, which in itself is a nose. So you put it into Copilot, and you're like, hey Copilot, this is the letter I want to write, using Mickey Mouse information as a tester, and it came out with an absolute load of cobblers. um, so I was like, okay, well, me collating all the information that I've just fed it, and then getting it back out again, and then disagreeing with it all, is actually taking more time than me just writing the blooming letter in the first place. So I'm not saying that we're not going to get there, but for me, I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's you've got to figure out what feels right for you, haven't you? And if
Yeah,
you don't believe it, it goes back to what we said before. If you don't think this is good, then you
yeah.
got no chance.
Mm, yeah. So I'm not saying that I never use AI. I absolutely do. I do a lot of, I use it for research mainly. So for example, I get a lot of requests from journalists to, comment on, I did one this morning for The Independent on mattresses. Well, I'm not a mattress expert, but I know how to research mattresses. So I will go in and I will use my AI and be like, find me some really good reports on articles on mattresses. I'll bring those in. I'll get AI to synthesize it, and then I will write my piece based on what it's come up with and what it's synthesized for me. So yeah, I can use it. I do use it for research. I don't use it for a lot else yet. I use it for some of my emails that go out around my book and my online courses and stuff. I do use it for that, but it's all heavily edited. It's not. It never comes up with me going, yes, that is perfect.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's definitely you look at it and just think, yeah, that's not
That's
me.
80% right.
Yeah,
But sometimes it is 80% right. But what you need to put in is is the spice that makes it you.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, it is interesting with it, and it's changing all the time, isn't it?
Yes.
So I think as long as you're aware of that, you
And
need to be aware of it, then
the new
that's
iteration of Claude is so much better than the previous ones because it's actually, getting much hotter on the research, and it's hallucinating articles much less. Because
right.
that's the other thing, is it used to absolutely hallucinate articles. I'd be like, can you find me an article on this? And like, yes, here is the perfect article. And then you go into Google Scholar and it doesn't exist. And you go
That's
back and you
mental,
go,
isn't
did
it?
you just invent that? And it goes, yes, well caught.
That is mental, isn't it? It is
Yeah.
really, it's quite scary as to what it is. But anyway, that's a different topic of
But yes,
conversation.
but that's one of the reasons I don't think it's ready yet, is that it does hallucinate.
Yeah,
And if it hallucinates on something that's important, like healthcare, that's a problem.
yeah. Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah, I think it certainly brought it to me that I want to be up to speed on it, and just be aware of to what's happening with it. But then again, it's moving all the time. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's very interesting. So in terms of your books, then, how did they come
Yeah.
about?
So when I started looking at how I think about the body, it occurred to me about 15 years ago that about that that if I look at different systems of the body and look at then I've turned it into what I call the health and performance pyramid, which is so on the bottom layer I look at tissue health, so I'm looking at sleep, stress, hydration, nutrition. The next layer I'm sort of looking at is the more physio layer, so that's the sort of looking at the alignment, biomechanics, control, so it's the nervous system side of things. On top of that, I layer the musculoskeletal system, so strength, flexibility, and endurance. And on top of that, I layer sort of specific movement patterning for sports. And so I wrote the book of that because I was telling people about it all the time. It's on the wall in my clinic, and I was just like, I'm just going to write all this down because I want something that my patients can refer back to and be like, oh, that's what she meant. This is how she's gone into it in more detail. So I really wrote it for my patients. And then it just kind of grew from there. And, I've sold, I think, nearly 2,000 copies so far, and it's still top 5 in physiotherapy books on Amazon. About 18 months after I published it, which is incredible. We've sold over 100 copies this month alone. And, I've been told that a self-published book, which is what it is, the average one sells less than 100 copies in its lifetime. So I'm super chuffed with it, to the point, but it's not just that, because also then Dorling Kindersley, the publishers, got in touch, and I've literally just signed a book deal to write a practical book, essentially. So yeah, we've got the book with all the exercises, should hopefully be coming out next summer.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so fun stuff. And again, it's not about the book itself, but it's about the doors that it opens and the minds that it opens to the idea that it wasn't just a knee that walked into my clinic today. It was a whole person who happened to have a sore knee, but why was their knee sore?
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine that you've just learned a load by doing it, because you've got to
Oh god, yeah.
research it, you've got
Yes.
to really dig into things, and
Yeah.
you find
And
things
challenge my
maybe,
ideas.
yeah,
Go, I've been saying this for years. This is absolute nonsense. Or we've moved on from that idea now.
yeah,
So yeah, it did involve, yeah, there was a little bit of soul searching some of the time.
yeah, yeah. Well, no, I've officially been banned of writing another book by my wife, so I'm
Well,
just not telling her that I'm doing it.
that's one way to manage it for sure.
Yeah, well, we were on honeymoon in South Africa, so that's where we were.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
yeah, thank you, thank you. So when I'm on there, like researching, asking ChatGPT if this is a good idea, which obviously every idea is an amazing idea.
Oh, of course it is.
When
It's
you
built to
when it
validate.
always, oh wow, what a great idea. And
Aren't
she's
you
like,
the
what are you
cleverest
doing?
boy?
What are you doing over there? I'm just like, oh, well, I'm
Oh,
just looking at
doom
a
scrolling.
cruise that we can go on this evening. So it
Yeah.
doesn't look like it. Don't worry about that. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
right.
fine. It's fine. It's all good. I'm just researching.
So no, I'm intrigued. So you said it's opened doors then. So what
Mm.
doors has it opened for you?
Well, so for example, that the Dorling Kindersley book, they wouldn't have found me had I not written the first book.
Yeah,
It's things like that. It's people finding me when they wouldn't necessarily have found me. And and that's, he has the potential to be exciting, right? When your
yeah,
ideas start, catching other people's imagination. That's what's exciting. That's what's fun. It opens the doors for potential collaborations. Um, and you know, who knows what might happen with it.
Yeah. No, I think it all goes back to purpose again with that bit. And
Yeah,
like you were saying, enthusiasm is like, it's like you're doing stuff you love doing.
yeah.
It's like, well, why are you writing a book? You're not going to make a load of money from it,
No,
most likely. It's not about that, but it's
I'm
you
never going to
actually
make back
look at,
what I spent on it.
yeah, well, no,
Never.
exactly. That's it. It's not going to be a profit-making thing,
No.
most likely. However, it's like if you love doing it and it's part of who you are,
Mhm.
it's like that. What a great thing to be able to do.
It's spreading ideas, right? That's what I do it for. And I do that with my book, I do that with my courses, I do, you know, it's about spreading, because people can't get to me, right? So my waiting list is closed at the moment. Even if my waiting list isn't closed, it's very long. I'm in central London, lots of people can't get to me. I'm very expensive because I'm in central London, so lots of people can't afford me. But could they still benefit from my ideas in my brain? Yes. And so that's why I produce content, is that so people can still benefit, because I think these ideas are ideas that could benefit a lot of people.
Yeah. In terms of disseminating that info, because say people
Mm,
who don't want to read a book or
yeah.
whatever, like
Hmm.
how do you is that something going back to the AI bit? Have you looked at like exploring that bit and breaking it down and
So
videoing it or whatever?
yeah, so I've got an audiobook version. So for the people who aren't keen on reading, I've got a workbook version for the foundation layer, the sleep, stress, hydration, nutrition, because I had a lot of my more neurodiverse patients were very much like, these are lovely ideas. What the hell do I do with them? Do neurotypical people just do this? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, let's break it down and make it very practical. So I've got a workbook that goes with it. And then I've got online courses as well. So there's all video based stuff going, right, let's look at, you know, here's me talking about how, you know, how we manage, how we optimize sleep, stress, hydration, nutrition within lifestyle context. Obviously, this is not actual like psychotherapy. You know, how do we, you know, can you self-assess your body? So, you know, what tests can you do? What outcome measures can you think of? And what tests can you do that might affect those outcome measures? So it's just getting that concept to sort of test, retest. Yeah, so I'm yes, I've got videos, so I've got my YouTube channel, but I've also got, you know, more formal courses. I'm just working on a course at the moment, nearly finished it, for people who are on the waiting list for knee replacements, to prehab, because of course you know, in the NHS at the moment you get told you need a knee replacement, and then you get told you can have one in 18 months, but you don't get given any support for that 18 months, so you get weaker, stiffer, more pain, you deteriorate over that 18 months, and then 18 months later when you get the knee, you're not as fit and ready for it, and so you get less benefit. So I'm like, okay, what can we do with that time? How can we help people to move forward? And they can't get to me, but they can watch my videos, and they can self-test, and they can go, okay, where's my weakest area? Am I weakest in my hamstrings? Am I weakest in my glutes? Is my balance crap? You know, all those sorts of things, and they can optimize. um it's like a choose your own adventure. Remember those books?
Mm,
Roll a
mm.
six and go to the glutes module.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really I used to love those books, by the way.
Yeah. Me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, no, yeah, they're really good. Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. So, like, what would you could if you could paint like an ideal future for physio, what
Mm,
do you think it should look like in 10 years' time?
thoughtful. I think you know, I get it, but I'm a slight obsessive, if you hadn't picked up on that. For me, physio isn't what I do, it's who I am. Um, and I would love it if there were more people who thought about the root causes and not just the bit that hurts. That's what I would love to see in physio. I'd love to see it more personalized. I think the same about, you know, research. You know, RCTs start with a bunch of people with the same symptoms, but they're not going, but what was the root cause of that? So they're going, well, we took 150 people with patellofemoral pain, we gave them all the same exercises, and we were surprised that they responded differently. And I'm like going, well, but some of them had patellofemoral pain because they had weak glutes or a stiff pelvis or a stiff foot, or, you know, whatever the heck it is. You know, and some of them had bashed their knee and they had patellofemoral pain because they'd literally had a, you know, a contusion. Um, so why would they respond the same? And so, yeah, it for me, I want more looking at root causes and less looking at symptoms. That's what I'd love to see physiotherapy doing.
And what's the best way for people to start navigating to that way of thinking?
Obviously, go read my book. Um, but there are plenty of there are plenty of people teaching that sort of thing. I mean, Diane Lee was sort of my introduction to it, but there's and I think she's wonderful, but she's also in Canada, and she I mean, she was in her 70s when I started learning with her, so she's not going to be around forever. But there's a few of us who are bashing on about this stuff. Jean-Pierre Barral talks about it. There's plenty of areas to learn from, and just thinking about it and going, right, what are the outcome measures? Why don't I try a few things and see what changes, and then see what comes out of that? So yeah, I think that's where I would like physio to go. And I would love to see that the clinical reasoning side discussed more in uni than the following the research, which I don't necessarily think is of the quality that I would like it to be.
Yeah, I think it does need something like this, because it's easy to from I'm an advocate for how do we raise the value and standard of the whole industry of rehabilitation, sports medicine. How do we get clients valuing spending more on this, because people are so qualified and yet they're not, say, charging enough for some of this stuff. And we sell technology, that then how do you make money on all of these things? But it's got to be more of a philosophical approach than just you need to charge an extra 20 quid for that or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So
exactly.
what are your thoughts on that?
Then I think it's got to be more targeted and more reasoned. It's too easy to say, well, this person has, I don't know, an Achilles tendinopathy, so we should shockwave it. I'm like, but why is that Achilles overloaded? How can we change the movement patterns so that the load is redistributed? Have they got, is it to do with the calcaneus? Is it to do with the knee? Is it to do with the hip? What's going on here? And it may be that there is an intrinsic Achilles problem, in which case, your shockwave is perfectly directed. But it may be that there's a movement patterning problem, which means that it doesn't matter how much you shockwave it, it's never going to get better because it's just overloaded.
Yeah.
So it's, I think it's that thoughtfulness and that real understanding of bodies and systems, or is that Achilles never going to get better because they are stressed out of their box and they're going through, they're incapable of healing. Because all of their tissues are just so inflamed because they're so stressed, and they're not sleeping, and they're not eating properly, and that all that sort of side of things.
Yeah.
So I think when the tool that you've got is your shockwave or your steroid injection or whatever it is, it's very easy for everything to look like that's what it deserves. But I think there's a place for deeper thought.
Definitely. Look, again, we're a seller of technologies, and that's how we make our money. However, we absolutely would advocate this.
Right?
No, it does have a place.
But it's got to be the right place.
Yeah.
It's got to not try and be a panacea.
No, look, again, I think that's what.
And you know that.
Well,
that's how you get the best results,
I think it is important, because you do, like, even we've stopped going to some trade shows, because you just go and you hear in the stands, and it's just like, I know that's just what the norm is. This is good. You can do that. You can charge that. And that doesn't interest me in the slightest. It's like we need to think more about why we're doing anything. Like trying to understand really why you're doing this, and really picking the right people for it as well. And
because then it'll be more effective.
Yeah.
And that's how you develop your success stories, isn't it? Is you only use it on the right people.
Yeah. I think it'd be great. I'll pick it up with our head of academy, because we'd love to do something with you, just talking about those things, because maybe you use it far less, or and that's fine.
But you use it selectively.
Yeah.
But the point is to use it selectively, not to think, hey, we've got this tool, we must use it on everybody because it's a profit machine or whatever it is. But you get better results that way, and then you get more patients through the door, because they know you're going to be selective with it.
Yeah. That's good. Well, I don't want to make it about shockwave, because that wasn't the intention anyway. But
but
it's
not just shockwave. It's everything, right? Whether it's ultrasound, whether it's scanner, or radio frequency, whatever the heck it is, all of those things. We've just got to be selective about who we use them with.
Yeah. Brilliant. Look, Nell, really appreciate your time on this. It's been fascinating. And
it's been really fun.
Yeah, we'll be in touch about doing something else with you in the near future.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nell.
Cheers.
Cheers.